works. It tells all the people that want to get out to the beaches can go right through and get there. And apparently that's not the case now that it's done.
It has lights.
It has a light on the entrance to it from the mainland that controls the flow of the traffic coming from the mainland going into it.
All of the ones that I went through in Edinburgh have lights. They're back to round intersections with lights instead of cross intersections with lights.
It depends upon how well it's designed as to...
But that's another meeting. You're going to have a good meeting on roundabouts.
Oh, yeah.
Is there a question?
Yes.
I would not.
Water transportation is what...
Well, the
Sir,
MPO.
will you step behind?
Sure.
Oh, that's good. You want to
The MPO did conduct a feasibility analysis of water taxis roughly 10 years ago, and the bottom line was that with certain conditions in place, water taxis can provide a mobility option for our downtown area and for the coastal areas. And some of those caveats were that you have to have infrastructure in place to accommodate where the water taxis would land, places for people to park so they could go back and forth. So with certain conditions, which might require a public subsidy, you could have water taxis. If the private sector operated them completely and started them up and ran them for a profit, you could probably do it a lot quicker than using federal funds. When you start using federal funds, then you are looking at a 10 to 12 year concept to concrete timeline for transportation projects. I'm Dave Hutchinson.
And that's online, by the way, that water taxi study. It's very interesting. And I didn't agree with a lot of the stuff in it, and I said why, but it's, first of all, I had a wrong kind of vessel, but anyway.
But one of the
it's a good subject.
a quick comment on plans and impact fees and mobility fees, and we operate at the MPO within a hierarchy of various plans, from the federal statutes that govern federal transportation spending down to local comprehensive plans and community development guidelines. And what we end up trying to do is find and achieve and promote and facilitate consistency among all of these various levels and hierarchies of plans. It's not always easy because, the guy with the big truck wants, big wide roads that he can turn and not knock anyone over. The person on the bicycle wants those trucks as far away from him or her as they can get them usually. So somewhere in the mix is a mechanism for designing roads that would either separate the trucks from the bicycles, for example, or design them so that they are both going at such a speed that there isn't the conflict. Reducing the conflict is the challenge.
I might add, I didn't get into that because I know your eyes would glaze over, and at this time of night they're going to glaze over anyway, so I can add to what Dave has said. Money comes from various sources, from various funds, both state and federal. They are detailed and well described and based upon the politics at the time the funds were approved. And if you know what you think about Washington today and the Congress today, you will understand that you keep getting a new view of how the money ought to be spent, and so you have a new program, or you think that the programs are too diverse, so you consolidate them. The last federal legislation consolidated them into, I'll say three. That's not technically correct, but there's three basic fund sources from the federal side. And the staff of the MPO has to relearn everything. And fortunately, they didn't change any of that this time. But next time around, you watch. We already have more emphasis on bicycle, pedestrian issues they are less expensive. It's good because there's been very little on that, but gotta watch out that doesn't get overweight in terms of the needs of other users. So we get a constantly changing source of money buckets at the upper levels. The MPO does the work of sorting that out. And if they didn't do that, there might be money that wouldn't get spent because nobody would know where it was or where it was supposed to go. So it's really an important function. And it's very hard to go into detail about how that works, but it does work.
I'd like to speak just for a second because you mentioned, Mr. Hutchinson mentioned the bike lanes and what have you. We were in Jackson Hole a few months ago and riding around there, the bike lanes are completely separate from the roads. They're just in separate asphalt lanes that are filled with bikers. Now, if you go out to Micah Park here on State Road 72, there's a bike lane. But I don't know of anybody who would be foolish enough to really want to ride in one of those bike lanes because several people have been killed in those. And as long as we're going to do these things, we're spending money for a 3 or 4 foot strip on the side of the road that's dangerous. Why don't we just build real bike lanes 5 feet off the road or whatever and do something decent? But to put these little strips on with a line that if there's a car or a truck in front of you, you can't see if somebody's in the bike lane. You can't see the bike lane. It's obscured. These are the most unsafe things ever, and yet we're making a big whoop-de-doo about our mobility thing. We're putting bike lanes in. As far as I'm concerned, only fools are going to ride on them, but just my personal opinion.
Before you discuss that, I'd like to know if anyone has any questions related to FDOT. They have to travel back to Bartow this evening. If there's going to be one question, but go ahead.
Specific to the bypass, as an example, due to that concern, the bike lanes were widened to 7 feet. There was a considerable interest in having the bike lanes separate. The cost of that is astronomical. It takes even more money to take the extra land that would be needed to get the extra space to build the barrier and build the big bike lane. There was barely enough money to do the basic stuff as it was, and the 7 foot change was ingenious. Now, personally, I don't think a road like that should have bike lanes, because I think you're nuts if you bike on a road like that. And there are ways in that particular area that you can bike alongside that road without getting on it. However, the real answer is back to what I just said. The cost is astronomical. And until we have the will to fund that kind of highway development, it's not going to happen because nobody's going to vote for the money. And the only answer is the public. That's the only answer.
I served on the MPO in the middle 90s. I was on the MPO when the bridge was built, the Ringling Bridge was built. We called it the bridge to nowhere. And the second bridge should have been built to take all that traffic and take it over to Longboat Key. And that bridge really needs to be built now. And you cannot evacuate either St. Armand Circle, Lido Key, or Longboat Key during an emergency, such as a hurricane. Second thing I'd like to say, while I was on the MPO, I had 2 very frustrating years, and I'll tell you why. The MPO at that time did not listen to the Citizens Advisory Committee. And all that we were there for was to rubber stamp something. And as I say, I sat on that for 2 years. I'm not a rubber stamp type of guy. And when And that would be the thought I'd like to leave with the MPO, is you need to get good qualified people on that Citizens Advisory Committee, and you need to listen to them. And, you know, we all live here in Sarasota County and Manatee County, and we live with these problems every day. And I, in particular, have been here 34 years. And a lot of the stuff you said tonight is true, but the reason it's true is because Sarasota County has never had any good transportation planning. And when you're talking about I-75, what you need is a major arterial on both sides of I-75 to pull some of that traffic off of I-75. Monterey Avenue was supposed to do that. You're right. The turnarounds are too small. It's never going to accomplish that in an emergency. And you know, that's just the thoughts I'd like to leave with the MPO, is listen to your Citizens Advisory Committee and not as much to the politicians. And I think you'll accomplish everything you've talked about tonight.
I might say it's a little different as far as the CAC is concerned. It is definitely not a rubber stamp. And a lot of what we do stems from stuff that's bubbled up out of the CAC. As far as the second bridge is concerned, there is a very interesting study. It's online that was made, I think, after you were on the MPO, that you want to read. You will enjoy taking it apart, but it's there, and it's pretty thorough. So you want to look at that, and you go to the website, it's there. Anything else?
Any more questions? Well, I think we're going to be able to wrap up the meeting right on time. Thank you very much. It's just old age. Don't forget, our next meeting is on historic preservation. Thank you very much.